Good morning. I'm
Good
Jason.
morning.
Mark had reached out to me yesterday and asked if I would be willing to do pre-worship. And so I spent some time thinking about what I wanted to say. And I decided I would do a couple of readings from this book. It's called This Here Flesh by Cole Arthur Riley. This was my number one read from last year, and it wasn't even close. And so just maybe a chance to step into a space of understanding what does it look like to live from true self, connection with the spirit, connection with others, and how that might lead us to a place of freedom. And so I'm going to read one short section from a chapter called Calling, and another from a section called, or the chapter titled Freedom. The first part from the section on calling. The process of knowing the self should be relentless. It will always be worth asking what is really true of us, for each day we live, we do so with deeper longings for acceptance, and the risk of alienation can cause us to dissociate from the truth of ourselves. Would you believe I have known seasons in which even the cadence of my voice has changed so that I might belong to a group of people whose stories and thoughts and ways were never anything like mine? But each year I know love and belonging, a love that doesn't require sacrifice at the altar of acceptance. I become more of who I already am. I'm liberated into what Merton calls my true self. I believe this is my deepest calling. This doesn't mean I won't be called into new things or experience spiritual calls to change or grow. But even with the things I will become, I am called to them because on some deep plane of the soul, they are already true of me. I choose them out of a fidelity to self, not an aspiration toward an idealized self. When asked to give the commencement address to a room of Spelman College graduates, the Reverend Howard Thurman spoke not of changing the world, but of listening to one's inner life. He said, "There is in you something that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. And sometimes there is so much traffic going on in your minds, so many different kinds of signals, so many vast impulses floating through your organism that go back thousands of generations, long before you were ever a thought in the mind of creation, and you are buffeted by these. And in the midst of all of this, you have got to find out what your name is. Who are you? You know the ache of hiding, of pretending to believe something, of words in conflict with the spirit. It does something to the soul, not in time, but immediately and every time, when by choice or bondage or shame we are dragged out of ourselves into a miraged self. That journey erodes the marrow of the soul. The miraged self has no concern for the sound of the genuine in you, for the body, for the mind. It will not breathe for you. Do not be deceived. It does not want you hidden. It wants you dead. It is not dress up. It is suffocation, a murderous exile. To survive it, we must gain a certain loyalty to our selfhood. We must free the part of ourselves that seeks to protect the self. I've accepted that the whole of my life will be a pilgrimage toward the sound of the genuine in me. This may sound troubling to those who've been conditioned to believe that our journey is to God and God alone. But I say the two paths are one. My journey to the truth of God cannot be parsed from my journey to the truth of who I am. A fidelity to the true self is a fidelity to truth. I won't apologize for this. If you want to decipher who you are, it's good to begin with the question of what stories have been told about you. Do this not because they are true, but because they will help you locate the mirages and their origins. They will help you rend mask from flesh. They may also help you grab hold of something real. Howard Thurman went on, "Now, if I hear the sound of the genuine in me, and if you hear the sound of the genuine in you, it is possible for me to go down in me and come up in you, so that when I look at myself through your eyes, having made that pilgrimage, I see in me what you see in me, and the wall that separates and divides will disappear. This is his assurance that our calling into self need not be solitary, nor is it only for the healing and protection of me, just as outer voices can lead you away from the well of your own selfhood. They also have the capacity to usher you into new depths of it. And if practiced right, your calling into selfhood may enhance the sound of self in someone else. And then from his chapter titled, or her chapter titled Freedom, she says, there will always be people who are threatened by freedom in another person, who have something to gain from our bondage. And there are also voices who deeply love us, but are unable to exist in the tension of who we are and what we believe and who they desire us to be and what they desire for our beliefs. This is the life of a human, particularly a human with any concern for belonging or survival. We are dragged with such a force in so many disparate directions that our souls, disoriented, are unable to find their way back to center. And for most of us, the journey back is costly. In spirituality, this leads many of us to profess beliefs that we do not truly believe. Like when I told a cabin full of campers that if they confess their sins and believe in Jesus, they'll be saved from hell, when really I don't know what hell is, or if I'm going, or if I have been. Or when Day tells me she likes girls, and I sit in silence instead of saying, me too. And it's terrifying. But if there is a God, I hope he loves us, not despite this, but because of this. Many of us end up surrendering a spirituality that allows us to be curious and uncertain and free so that we can maintain some semblance of belonging, even if that means we adhere to a way of life that doesn't leave room for the truth of us. Whenever I become uncertain of which direction liberation lies in, I ask myself to tell the truth, not that I am capable of comprehending what any ultimate truth is, but I am capable of at least telling the truth about what I believe to be true, my inmost convictions, desires, or even an embodied revelation, the truth that rattles in my bones. There is no greater exhaustion than a charade of spirituality. A life that is holy is a life that allows for all of your uncertainties, your curiosities, and unbelief, that doesn't just allow for them, but holds them sacred. Spirituality that has not permitted these liberties is merely subjugation. It is not in protection of the divine. It is in protection of fragile people who are unable to allow spiritual freedoms without their own spirituality feeling threatened. It is a spirituality that is terrified of meditation for fear of resembling another faith tradition. It's a spirituality that spends more time on apologetics than conversation and telling stories. To be liberated spiritually is to commune with and seek God without fear of alienation if we do not reach the same conclusions as our neighbor. It is to become spiritual creatives. Who are we that we would demand certainty or clarity of mystery? In too many spaces, we've become suspicious of beliefs that leave room for the unknowable. If uncertainty is permitted, it is permitted around carefully defined points of interest, like communion or mortality. There is rarely room for new uncertainty. If one person is certain about a thing, it demands either an agreement or disagreement, a certainty or feigned certainty from all others. So this book really hit me this year. I hope these two short sections will give some food for thought as we enter into worship today.